Great. In today's section, we are going to continue from where we ended at the IAS 36 impairment of assets. So let's look at it. IAS 36 impairment of assets. Impairment of assets. Basically, we mentioned three types of assets that IAS 36 talks about, how we should impair them. The assets are, number one is the individual assets. Individual assets. Number two, we look at what you call, we can also call the corporate assets. Individual assets or public corporate assets. Number two, we can look out for cash generating units. By the way, if I've not gone through the first lecture, kindly go through before we proceed to this. This is the continuation of the very first one. Check the video description section. There's a link there. Tap on that link to watch that very one first. Look at cash generating units. And again, if you have not subscribed, kindly do so. Number three is intangible assets. Intangible assets without a definite life, such as goodwill. So impairment of goodwill. This I'll look at goodwill and a consolidation. So probably will not treat that. Our first lecture video concerning the IAS 36 impairment, we treated individual assets, meaning assets that produce cash flow on their own. They produce the money alone. They don't combine any assets. Good. So you owe a piece of vehicle or a piece of land, and if you rented the land out for public rental income, you can realize that this inflows coming from a single asset. So single assets or individual assets. Single individual corporate assets, we are done. Today, in this particular section, we are going to look at for impairment of cash generating units. So that is where we are now. This us as consolidation, we look at it for you. So impairment of cash generating units. The impairment of what? Cash generating units. Of cash generating units. Okay. Now, what happened is this. What happened is this. Some of the assets, they don't produce cash flows on their own, single or individual, unless they come together as group before they can produce cash flows. Critical example could be previous example that we gave. Check bus driver, bus driver. Number two, the bus manager or the CEO or the corporate affairs, senior corporate affairs manager. We are just adding a bit of modernization to the job. In some countries, they call it structural mate, right? Come on, call them senior corporate affairs manager. But we call them conductors, so bus conductors. So the bus conductors. Okay, so if you have a transport unit, the bus itself, the driver versus the conductor, the public, the one that receives receipts and takes money from the passengers. Good. These three people come together to produce a cash flow. There must be a bus, there must be a driver, and there must be a conductor before the money will be in. Even if the bus is driverless, you don't have a physical driver, probably there's someone controlling the bus at the in-house, and that person probably is a driver, just that it's not in the bus. That's all. So how do we impair them? All of them come together before they can produce what? Cash flow. None of them produce cash flow on their own. Good. So how do we impair such assets? That is all. That is today's session. Now, let's look at the definition for cash generating unit. It's the smallest group of assets. Smallest group of what? Assets. Okay, so great. Let's look at this. So we are saying that cash generating unit is the smallest group of assets. So tell the examiner that cash generating unit is what? Smallest group of assets. That's the first smallest group of assets for which it is not possible. It's not possible. So another one, for which not possible. Not possible. Possible to identify separate independent cash flows. Possible to identify. So to identify independent or separate independent cash flows. Cash flows. That is all. In simple quotes, these are assets that do not produce cash flows on their own unless they come together. Unless they come together. Good. So let's see. Let's give quite a number of examples of cash generating. Please, in defining it, just all of them together. So you just clear this one from there, and that's the definition. So I make this one like this. I turn this one to this. We are done with the cash generating. That's the definition given to us. Now let's give more examples of cash generating. If I owe a conference room, so a quick example is what? Conference room. If I owe a conference room or a conference center, conference hall, or event center, conference or renting it for, let's say, $500. This conference hall going for have asset like one. We have equipment, set of equipment, stage is in there. We have ultra modern sound, which includes the equipment. We also have air conditions or ACs. We also have furniture, international furniture, and fittings. In fact, we also have the room itself for the room decor. So what happened is this: all these assets come together to produce the $500 per section. So it's not only the room which produces the 500, it's not only the AC, neither the equipment, that is all. So it's an example of what? Cash generating unit. You can give an example of a school. Have you seen school? And 2, school bus. School bus. 3, canteen service. Realize that it's not the school alone that produces the cash flow. The school probably have a school bus that normally carries the students from various destinations to the campus and back home. So all of them are inclusive. It includes canteen. Although some of the school asks the parent to pay for the bus and the canteen separately. Yes. So that if you don't pay, you don't enjoy those services. But some of the school, it's comprehensive. Everything is a package coming together. That is the kind of asset that we are talking about. It's like a package, everything in there. As soon as you pay the $500, you are entitled to the set of equipment, including ultra modern sound, AC, furniture, the room itself. So that is what we are talking about. In total, we call it cash generating unit. A critical example is acquisition of a company. Third examiner, if you acquire a company, so let's assume that let's assume that Target PLC acquires a subsidiary company called Itwell Limited. So Itwell Limited. So Target acquire Itwell Limited. Itwell Limited. Okay. Now what happened is this. Let's assume that this company, they do have assets, a lot of assets. The company have assets. Let's even assume that Target pays for goodwill. This company, Itwell Limited, have a set of PPE, of course. They have brands, brand names. This company have inventory. This company has a lot of assets. All these assets come together to produce the money for targets. So, however, we can classify this company as what? As cash generating unit. That is under CGU. So Itwell Limited can be classified as what? Cash generating unit. That is what probably we need to look at. Let's continue the game. That is the cash generating unit. Now, let's look at some issues about the cash generating unit in detail. Some features of cash generating unit. 1, all the individual assets does not produce cash flow separately. Okay, great. So there are some few features about cash generating units. Number 1, they don't produce cash flows individually. They don't produce cash flow individually. However, unless they come jointly. So what we have with this, they produce, it's very difficult for you to get the value in use for a single asset within the group. So if it's very difficult, however, we can easily determine the combination of the cash flows that they produce. So in short, it's difficult for you to determine the individual value in use and the cash generating unit. But for the combined cash flows, it's so easy. You can determine the Then 2, you can also have fair value less cost to sell individually for them because you can sell them, except for some of the assets it must be moved together as a group, like you saw them come. You can't have what you call standalone price for it. That goes on to IFRS 15. Okay. So basically, so in cash generation units, we need to first determine the carrying amount of the entire unit, the entire carrying amount. After determining the carrying amount, we now find what you call the recoverable amount. Still, impairment is the excess of the carrying amount over the recoverable amount. But here, in a case where the value in use for individual assets is very difficult. So for the value in use, we have to find for the combined asset together, the entire unit. However, for fair value less cost to sell, we can get for individual assets and now sum them up. So the fair value less cost to sell is a combination of what? All the assets fair value less cost to sell coming together. And then you select the higher to represent the recoverable amount. So you compare the combined value used versus what? That of the summation of the fair value less cost to sell. That is all. Then determine the impairment. So impairment is the essence, the difference between the current amount of the assets and that of the recoverable amount. Now, after determination of the impairment, this impairment, how it was allocated, because this impairment is for all the assets within the group. So how do you allocate the impairment charge to the cash generating unit asset or the assets within the group? Now, the determination of the impairment loss, we need to go in a certain order. According to the IAS 38, paragraph 104, it spells out how we should allocate the impairment charge. So first, we should reduce the current amount of any goodwill allocated to the cash generating unit. That is, in simple code, first, goodwill should go in first. So the first impairment must go to goodwill. Then the remaining assets, the other assets, on pro rata basis, on their current amount, based on the current amount. So these are the two steps. First step, we have to go in for goodwill. Second, on pro rata basis. But before we go to the pro rata basis, there are some little assets that we need to clear them off, such as asset which is what obviously impaired, or asset which is worthless, valueless. That must come what? Second. So after goodwill, asset which is worthless, obviously impaired, should be off. Second, move on to that of the next impairment. We move on to any intangible asset without an active market. It means that that asset do not have what? A recoverable amount, or do not have a fair value. And if you don't have a fair value, it's very difficult to get what? A recoverable amount. Good. Then the fourth one, move on to assets that the current amount exceeds the NRV, or the NRV is lower than the current amount. Then finally, the remaining impairment must be shared on pro rata basis. So you can just a few points together. Good. So basically that is all. But there's a condition, or there's a rule. As you are allocating the impairment charge, make sure that at the end of the day, the entity shall not, or at the end of the day, the asset carrying amount should not fall below 1, the fair value less cost to sell. 2, that is its value in use, meaning the recoverable amount. In short, after the impairment charge, make sure that the asset carrying value should not fall below the fair value and then the value in use, meaning that the asset carrying value should not fall below the recoverable amount or fall below zero. Take note, fall below zero or recoverable amount. So that is the stages that we go to allocate the impairment charge. Okay, so basically that is that. We'll come to some few illustrations and then we move it from there. So let's see this. Let's look at this particular asset. Let's go into this particular question for us to okay, so ABC Limited acquired a car taxi business on 1st January 2009 for 230,000. The value of this asset of the business and based on the net selling price as follows. Vehicle, 12 vehicles going for 120. Now there's something that we need to probably establish here. What happened is this. Acquisition, the consideration paid is 230,000. Meanwhile, the total net asset acquired is 190,000. So it tells you that you pay more than the value of the assets. So the excess amount we can deem as what? Goodwill. Because goodwill sometimes we refer as what? Investable asset on the company's balance sheet. Good. So you've acquired an asset worth 190,000 and you pay for 230. So there's 40,000 goodwill. So can you include goodwill of what? 40,000. How do you get a goodwill? Sum all the assets and left all the liabilities assumed. Whatever answer you get compared to the consideration transferred. If the consideration is more than the net assets, then we do have a goodwill. We pay the goodwill. That is all. So this is a typical cash generating unit. There's a vehicle, there's intangible assets, there's taxi license, good. There's trade receivables, yes. There's tax, there's trade payables. So I don't really get a net asset of this. I see something here. On 1st February 2009, the taxi company had 3 of its vehicles stolen. The net selling value of these vehicles uninsured. As a result of these events, the company wishes to recognize an impairment loss of 45,000, inclusive of the loss of the stolen vehicles, due to declining in the value in the use of cash units. That is the taxi business. On 1st March 2009, a rival taxi company business in the same area. It's anticipated that the business revenue of ABC Limited will be reduced by 25%, leading to decline in the present value in use of the business, which is calculated at 150,000 cedis. The net selling value of the taxi license has fallen to 25,000 cedis as a result of the rival taxi operator. The net selling values of the other assets have remained the same as at 3rd January 2009. Okay, so that is required. Show the treatment of the above impairment asset in its financial statement. Show the treatment of impairment loss after 1st February and 1st March. So there are 2 impairment tests during the year. One occurred in February, one occurred in March. How do you treat them? Good. So you need to treat the first favorite own and get a current amount after impairment, and now set in for match. Good. Follow us to next lecture video to get a full solution of these questions. We'll probably solve all the questions in the next lecture video. Kindly be with us when we start solving them. Great. So all these questions will be solved in the next lectures video. Will have a critical situation that makes it impossible for us to solve the question at the moment. So we'll do that in the next section. Okay. Look at this particular question. A company runs a that suffers massive drop in income due to the failure of its technology on January 1st, 2008. The following carrying values were recorded in the books immediately prior to the impairment. Goodwill is at 20, technology 5, branch 10, land 50, building 30. Other net assets. When you see other net assets, it represents inventory, receivable, less payable. So the other assets represent the working capital, which is made up of current asset less what? Current liability. Okay, so take note of that. And we don't impair other assets. No, we assume the value, their book value approximates their net realizable value. So no impairment test. Good. Let's see something here. So if you sum them up, what do you get? So 20 plus 5, 25, plus 10, 35, plus 50, 85, plus 30, 105, 115, plus 40, 155. Okay, let's see this. The recoverable value of the unit is estimated at 85,000 million. So it should be 85 million, not 85,000 million. The technology is worthless, valueless, obviously impaired. So that's the second point to move from the list. Apart from goodwill, goodwill should go first. Right after goodwill, worthless, obviously impaired assets should move. Following its complete failure, the other net assets include inventory, receivable, payables. It is considered that the book values of the other asset is reasonable representation of its net realizable value. So as usual, no impairment. So can you find impairment loss? Impairment loss will be the current amount is 155 less 85. So if you take off 85, you should get something like 70. So 70, then we need to allocate this impairment. First, out of the 70, goodwill should go, so 20 is gone, 11 got 50. The next one is obviously impaired asset or worthless. That is technology. So technology will go in for 5. So what level is 45? Then you prorate the remainder, the 45, on the basis of what? Remaining assets. That is how we will probably go by it. Great. So on that note, we'll probably end here and then solve the questions again. So we'll meet again for a complete version of question solving for cash generating unit. Actually, today we wanted to go in for that, but there's a technical issue that might not provide board access to the board for us to solve the question. You know, we solve our question in traditional way of solving a question, the board. So currently, our boards are not accessible. So very dark here, so we can't see anything. That is why we decided to hold on with the question solving. So can you join us again with the question solving of the cash generating units, and then you'll be fine. Great. So in our next meeting, we will solve questions on the IAS 36. So can you join us? Question solving. Great. Okay, great. We can continue the game. Sorry about the few interruptions. We had a little challenge with the system has been restored. So probably we can continue with our question. We are saying that with the cash generator unit, how do you probably allocate the impairment charge from cash generator unit? That's where we are. Now, the allocation of impairment charge to cash generator unit, let's assume that is calculated impairment. What are the bases? Tell the examiner that we have steps or the stages of allocating of what? Of impairment. In cash generating unit. First, it must move to goodwill. First goes to goodwill. Second moves to obviously impaired assets or asset which is what? Worthless, valueless. Good. So goes to obviously impaired assets or worthless. Obviously impaired assets or worthless. Or obviously impaired assets. 3, 4, in fact, the sections are 5, only 5 stages. 5 stages. Great. So what happened is this. So first, move it to goodwill. Second, worthless, obviously impaired asset. The next one, move to intangible asset without an active market, or intangible asset that do not have a recoverable amount. So intangible asset without a selling price or active market. So intangible assets without an active market. So add it to it without what? An active market. If you don't have an active market, meaning 1, you don't have a selling price. 2, you won't have probably selling price fair value, and you don't have recoverable amounts. So take note. So you are obviously impaired. The next one is any asset that the NRV is lower than the current amount. Any asset that the NRV is lower than CA, current amount, no shortcuts. Then the remainder must be shared on pro rata basis on the current amount. On pro rata basis, or the remainder should be shared on pro rata based on the current amount. So the remainder must be shared on pro rata basis. On pro rata basis based on your current amount, basically. That is all. So let's start question solving. Since our system has been restored back, we can still use devices. Like we said, we need to upgrade our devices to the extent that where system failure can still move on. So kindly subscribe and then support the system or support the firm to deliver world-class and quality tuition. Okay, so let's see our first question. Now let's quickly look at it first into detail. Now, this particular question, is sitting in here, right? The same thing in here. The same thing in here. Okay, so what happened is this. This particular question, let's go straight to the requirement. Show the impact of the impairment on 1st January 2008. So let's start. Company one saying it, that suffers massive drop in income due to failure of technology on 1st January 2008. The following current values were recorded in the books. Immediately fell to the impairment. Goodwill is there, technology, brands, land, building, other net assets. If you see other net assets, as we explained, it's made up of what? Inventory, receivable, less payable. That is the answer. So you can name as what? A working capital. Good. The recoverable value of the unit is estimated at 85,000. Sorry, it should be 85 million. The technology is what? Worthless, valueless, obviously impaired, following its complete failure, damage beyond repairs. The other net assets include inventory, receivables, and payables, and it is considered that the book value of the other assets. It is considered that the book value of the other asset is a reasonable representation of its net realizable value, the NRV. Okay, so let's do something in here. Quickly, what's the current amount? Kindly sum up 20, 5, 10, 30, 40. Let's put them together. Let's find the impairment. Recoverable amount is 85. In some extreme cases, you have to estimate the recoverable amount by yourself. How do you do that? You probably compare the value you use to that of the fair value less cost itself and select the highest among the two. That is all. Good. So let's go to the board. So basically, I'll tell the examiner that Mr. Examiner, the impairment will be calculated as follows. I need two figures, current value and recoverable amount. And Mr. Examiner, all of them are given to me. So let me just perform the calculation for you. To award me marks, first, we are calculating the impairment. So right here, impairment. Even first carrying amount. What is the carrying amount? Open the bracket. Sum all up 20 plus the 40, the last one. Can you put all of them together? What's the total carrying amount? So from the question, I think it's the one that we calculated, we had something like 155. So 25 plus 10, 35 plus 50, 85. 85 plus 30, 115 plus 40, 155. So that's the current amount, 155. Right here, Ghana cedis in millions. Thank you. Right here, 155. That is an less or recoverable amount. The recoverable amount happened to be 85. So therefore, what is the impairment charge? That's the first thing when I have the question. So So the impairment charge will be so it should be around 70, right? Agreed. Yeah, should be around 70. Should be around 70. Because this and this is 35, 85. So let me 70. So it should be 70. It's 75. I might not agree. I might not agree. 155 less 85. Any answer for us? I should give us 70. I'll take that. So impairment should be 70. So that is the impairment charge, 70. Good. So now this impairment, we need to allocate it to all the assets. Let's allocate the impairment charge to the assets. Let's see how best we can allocate the impairment charge. So allocation of the impairment charge, that's the next section. Kindly just some few points down because I think them off. Okay, so we know the impairment to be 70. The next stage is what we should allocate the impairment charge. So that is an allocation of impairment charge. Now let's go through the allocation. We normally put it in the 9 table. Start with the asset, write the assets here. Write the current amount here. Then write the impairment charge. And you get a current amount after all impairments. Current amount after all impairments. We have current amount before impairment and after impairment. Go to the question and list the asset in this order. So if my memory set me right, the assets are goodwill. So goodwill, the current amount is 20 million. Technology, which happen to be 5 million. Grants, which happen to be 10 million. Land, which happen to be 50 million. Building, in which the land stands. Building happen to be 30. Other assets, other net assets, also happen to be 40. So the total give us a current amount 155. Okay, so when you get note of this, basically, you should take note of this. Let's see. Can you go by the straight rule? The first impairment charge must go to who? The goodwill. You know, there are 5 steps or 5 stages that we should move. First, the impairment should go to number 1 on the list is what? Goodwill. 2, obviously impaired asset or worthless. 3, intangible without active markets. 4, any asset that the NRV is lower than the current amount. 5, share the remaining impairments on pro rata basis based on the current amount of the remaining assets. That is all. So first, goodwill's moved 20. So this impairment of 70 that we have determined over here, we need to share it among the assets because these are cash generating, this is a cash generating unit, and then all the assets come together to produce a cash flow. None of the assets produce the cash flow on its own. So likewise, if there's a loss too, we must also share the loss on the basis, on a fair basis. The next one goes to worthless. Is there any of this asset which is worthless? Let's go to the note. We're told that the technology is what? Worthless, valueless, following its complete failure. So technology should move from the system. Worthless. Now, we don't impair other assets. Don't impair it. So just put impairment dash. Make sure that you don't impair other assets. We don't impair other assets. And a good examiner should probably inform you about that. A good examiner should inform you that we don't impair other assets. But whether we inform or not, don't impair other assets. Why? Because impairment of current assets, IAS 36 does not cover that. As we saw in the previous lecture video, we said that IAS 36 does not cover it. Written down of what? Inventory, receivable, payable. No. IAS 36 does not cover that. So that's why we exempt. Okay, so 11, what's assets? So 11, brand, land, and building. Level 3 assets. Meanwhile, impairment to level 45, because so far we've allocated 35 out of 70. So it means that the remaining impairment must be shared on pro rata basis based on this asset. They are current amount. So pick the current amount and then allocate impairment charge on it. Let's see something here. So we don't have any intangible without an active market. They've not informed us that brands don't have an active market, so we cannot assume that. Second, we don't have any asset that the NRV is towards lower than the current amount, and hence we now move to the fifth point or the fifth stage, which suggests that we must share the remaining impairment. So the impairment level was 45. So the remaining 45 should be shared among the remaining assets based on their current amount on pro rata basis. So let's start. So let's list the assets that remain. All the assets that remain. Number 1, 11 brands. Brand, the current amount is what? Please, this section is not part, it's just a mere workings that we are doing here. Brand, the current amount is 10. Building, land is 50. Building is 30. Putting all together, I'll get something like 90. So let's pick calculator. We are going to share the remaining impairment, which is 45, based on the ratio of 10:50 to what? 30. So 1:5:3. So share this 45 on this basis. And then that is all. Sorry, that side is not coming clear. Okay, so that is the game. So if I take brand, then brand will be like this. The current amount is 10. So 10 divided by the total 90 times 45. So 45 divided by this should give us 5. However, if I is half, that means you're going to write all of them half. So this one will give us 5 negative, put them in brackets, because this one answer will give me 5. So come and put it in. Let's move on to the next asset. The next asset is what? Land. Land, the current amount is what? 50. So therefore, I'll just have to change the top to 50. And the denominator to 50. 50 out of 90 by 45. Now should give us something like 25. Put it in brackets. Let's move on to the next one, which is 30. That one also will give us 15. Put it in bracket. This one will be dash. If you sum all up, it gets to 70. Now let's determine the current amount after impairment. How do you get the current amount after impairment? Just pick the calculator. Current amount before impairment less the impairment. That should give us current amount after impairment. This will be dash, dash. They are gone from the system. Level 5, level 25, level 15, and level 40. If you put all this together, you should get what? The recoverable amount of what? The recoverable amount. The recoverable amount of 85. That is the end of the game. That is the end of the game. That is the end of the game. Okay, so basically that is what to consider, how to allocate an impairment charge and then set them in. Okay, so kindly take this particular question and just be dreaming about it. Analyze the circumstances under which impairment losses arise. So conditions, right? And and demonstrate the circumstances that may indicate indication of impairment, that company's assets may have become impaired as per provisions of IAS and 6 impairment of asset 5 marks. So here, no restriction. External, internal conditions or internal indicators, just bring them. Let's examine the circumstances. Asset impairment loss arise if current amount exceeds recoverable amount, full stop. Second, the indications are internal and external. Then you list them there for